If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Breaking news tonight.
Every angle, every night.
Say right here.
NBC Nightly News.
News for the generation of now is NBC News Now.
Kristen Welker hosts Meet the Press every Sunday on NBC.
Welcome back. In some rare on-camera comments last night, Chief Justice John Roberts defended the independence of the federal judiciary, which has been under attack from President Trump and his allies in Congress. The question he was answering was actually not about President Trump, but take a listen to what the Chief Justice said last night in Buffalo.
In our Constitution, judges and the judiciary is a co-equal branch of government, separate from the others, with the authority to interpret the Constitution as law and strike down, obviously, acts of Congress or acts of the president. And that innovation doesn't work if it's not, the judiciary is not independent.
Joining me now is New York Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman. He is a member of the House Judiciary Committee and is a former federal prosecutor. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Kristen.
Well, you just heard those comments from the Chief Justice, and I wonder what you make of them. He did not mention President Trump specifically, but we know that he has spoken out about attacks against the judiciary in the past. So what do you make of what we heard from the Chief Justice?
Oh, it's a clear message to Donald Trump and the congressional Republicans who are attacking judges, including Trump-appointed judges and as well as other Republican-appointed judges, for ruling against them. Literally, that's what they've done wrong, and they're going after them, threatening impeachment. And the Chief Justice recognizes that the credibility of the court is under attack. It has been under attack because of egregious ethics violations over the past several years, and its ratings, its poll numbers are as low as they've ever been. But now it's getting attacked from the president, who has appointed a number of these judges just simply because he doesn't like the law. And the point that he made is so vital, that the judiciary, not the executive branch, not Congress, is the branch that the Constitution assigns the obligation and requirement to interpret and rule on the law. Donald Trump may have a view, but he does not get to decide. He does not get to decide that the Alien Enemies Act applies. A court decides that. And he does not get to do anything without following the Constitution and due process.
I want to ask you about some comments that President Trump said to me during our interview this past week. He told me he wasn't sure whether every person in the United States is entitled to due process. And then he posted this on Truth Social in recent days. Quote, "Our court system is not letting me do the job I was elected to do. Activist judges must let the Trump administration deport murderers and other criminals who have come into our country illegally without delay." How do you read that, Congressman? And is there anything that Congress can do in this moment as we're witnessing this clash, quite frankly, between the Trump administration and the courts?
Well, first of all, the fact that he says he doesn't know whether he has to follow the Constitution and he doesn't know whether he needs to follow due process is a complete violation of his oath of office to properly follow the Constitution and enforce the laws. You can't just punt this onto your lawyers, just like you can't punt a military decision onto your generals. It's his obligation. He can get advice from his lawyers, but it's his decision. So that is passing the buck in sort of an embarrassing and weak way. But the broader point that you are raising is that it doesn't matter what he said when he was campaigning. He doesn't know why he was elected, and it doesn't even matter because every president is elected. You still have to follow the law. You still have to follow the Constitution. And you don't just get to say, well, this law doesn't apply or due process doesn't apply over here because, oh, there might be an administrative burden or, oh, these are bad people, so they need to be deported. That may be true. But there's a process for it, and you have to follow the process. And it doesn't matter whether you are elected to do anything or you campaigned on anything, you still have to follow the law.
I actually had a conversation with a Trump ally, Byron Donalds, your Republican colleague there in the House, about due process. And here's what he had to say.
When it comes to due process, that is a privilege reserved for American citizens. When people are in our country illegally, there is a semblance of due process, but not nearly at the level of a United States citizen, of an American. There are two different standards. You come to America, you are a guest in the United States. That privilege can be revoked. And a lot of these illegal aliens were not guests. They showed up at the southern border. Joe Biden abused our laws, ignored our laws, and let them in. And yet, so what are the American people supposed to say about that?
So, Congressman, the argument there being that if you have crossed the border, if you're undocumented, you've already broken a law, therefore you're not entitled to due process. Does he have a point? How do you respond to that argument?
Well, I appreciate his effort to support the president who has endorsed him for governor. But that's, again, not what the Supreme Court has said. And the Supreme Court has the final say over how the Constitution is interpreted. And the Supreme Court has made it clear over and over and over, that, including in a recent 9-0 decision in the Kilmar-Abrego-Garcia case, that every person, regardless of citizenship or whether they're here legally or illegally, has due process rights. Now, he is correct that there are different standards and levels of due process depending on what the proceeding is. If you are in an immigration proceeding, you don't have the full same constitutional rights that you would in a criminal trial. But you still have to have a notice and an opportunity to be heard. And the one thing, Kristen, that nobody seems to be talking about is that if you seek asylum in this country, you are here lawfully. That is a legal pathway to come into the United States. We, in a bipartisan way, passed those laws because Jews were not allowed to come into the United States during and after World War II. And our Congress and our government made the decision that that was unacceptable, and we're not going to allow that to happen again. So they're not talking about whether any of these people who do not have legal citizenship or legal permanent residency, and by the way, many of them do, but we're not talking about whether they applied for asylum, which is a lawful pathway. So they need to go to a court, and a judge needs to decide it. They may be right, they may be wrong, but it's not their decision. Congressman, with this final minute that we have left, can I get your reaction to the fact that former President Biden has started to conduct interviews, first with the BBC, today with The View, defending his decision to step down, saying, look, it was a hard decision, saying there was no mental decline, that he dropped out of the race to unify the Democratic Party. Democrats still in the process of trying to rebuild after those losses in 2024. Is this helping the Democratic Party move forward? Well, look, I am a great admirer of President Biden. I think he will ultimately go down as one of the most consequential presidents because of all of the legislation he was able to pass in his first 2 years and the incredible work he did on the international stage on his second 2 years. The problem with his legislation and his successes is that there were not immediate results. They were longer-term, very, very important legislative victories, but they didn't come to fruition in time for him to get the benefit of it. As we go forward and as the infrastructure law is implemented, as we hope the American energy credits in the Inflation Reduction Act are implemented, as some of the other seminal legislation is actually implemented, Americans are going to benefit from it. You can be sure that Donald Trump will take full credit for it, but it was Joe Biden's vision and his desire to do the right thing rather than the politically expedient thing that ultimately, I think, sacrificed some of his favorability. All right, Congressman Goldman, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Still to come, the Trump administration's immigration crackdown faces a new legal setback after a judge blocked the government from sending deportation flights to Libya. That reporting is next. You're watching Meet the Press now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.